Welcome back to Orlando, Florida. Well, actually, it's Maitland, Florida.
Yeah,
For
sure.
people who don't really know how Orlando works, it's a massive town. The main city is pretty tight, but then there's a bunch of infinite suburbs, which still count as Orlando, which is really cool.
That's very, very true. I'm actually from one of those suburbs, known as Winter Garden, so it's a
So
very
am I.
yeah, wow, that's awesome.
Winter Garden's right. It's so weird because like Winter Garden is technically in Orlando, but it's actually like a solid 30 minutes away.
Yeah.
So I don't actually agree that Winter Garden is Orlando, but like that's what it says, so I just have to go with it.
It's definitely outskirts, but I call it like the Disneyland. Like that's just like anything over there is just where Disney is.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah, it's there's also like if you go because like Winter Garden's north of Disney World.
yeah.
If you go south, there's Kissimmee, which is just like this huge wide bit, and everything, and there's just like Kissimmee, and you're like, it's not like the actual town is like way over here, and then like everyone else is over here.
You know what my favorite part about Kissimmee is? Like we just have like those giant like stands where it's just like a wizard just like staring
Oh,
you
the
down.
wizard gift
Like yeah,
shop?
like
Yeah.
like it's so weird. It's like you only get that in Florida. Like you can't get that anywhere else. Like
I don't know if you remember this. This was many years ago. I think I want to say it was 2014 or 15. We had a regional here, and it was on a road called 192, which is like a main tourist road.
right, yeah.
And it was behind the hotel it was in was set back from the road a little bit. And like when I was trying to give people directions to it, they'd be like, "Well, where is it? Like I can't see it." It's like there's a sign for it on the road. They're like, "Oh, I can't see it." I'm like, "Just turn right at the Mermaid." And genuinely, like it was on the gift shop, so this just
Right.
huge like 2-story mermaid outside, and they were like, "Okay." And then like people giving directions would be like, "Have you gone past the wizard yet?" Yes. What about the jungle? No. Okay, keep going. You'll see the mermaid. And then that was it, yeah.
Well, I think like the favorite part is like it's like that is a very consistent way to like actually tell where you are inside Florida. 'Cause it's like you're not gonna miss it. It's like you're on the road. You're like, oh, that's the wizard he was talking about.
Yeah.
You can't miss it. Like,
Well, no,
like,
the wizard's dangerous because there's 2 wizards.
oh, there are.
Yeah,
What?
if you go further down 192, there's another wizard. It's great.
Oh my! Wow, I've been missing out. I've only seen half the Florida. I've
Yeah.
double the Florida experience to get in my head. I guess.
Yeah, there's no wizards in Winter Garden. Just like
right.
just a big target. It's
Oh,
great.
man.
So yeah, I mean that's a little bit of Florida history for those of you who don't going to come down. We do have a number of players here today, a good solid 30 nearly turning out. So the scene appears to be alive and well here.
It definitely does. I'm kind of excited for this next game. That kid right there, Robert Bosch to the left. A little fun fact: he was my ride here, so there's that. Also, he's my little prodigy. I'm currently commentating this event. I'm hoping he can pick the torch up and do really well. But obviously, he's got a tough battle ahead of him as we see another Chi-Yu team from Rhett here. So I'll go ahead and list off the teams. We have Rhett Hamlin playing Chi-Yu, Fluttermane, exact same thing we saw last game, except this one is a different version. It has Torkoal, Roaring Moon, Amoonguss, and Great Tusk. So it's kind of funny because some teams are now less constructed inside this format. In previous formats, it was all about spamming the fire typing, but now it's really about just the abilities, like photosynthesis. You're powering up your Roaring Moon, powering up your Fluttermane, powering up Chi-Yu. Obviously, that's another fire type, and Great Tusk. It's like just so much synergy with Sun. Torkoal's the great little setter there. And then Robert going with much more tried and true, just balanced team with Amoonguss, Fluttermane, Arcanine, Palafin, Dragonite, and King Gambit. And I really like that team. I'm a big advocator of balance.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's good. I do think going back on your point about the Sun teams as well is like, when I first saw Photosynthesis, I was like, surely Torkoal's just on every team. And it's taken us probably like 2 months to figure out actually how good it is. Finding partners for it, finding ways to use it outside of it just providing the Sun. So it makes a lot of sense. But, setting up a Roaring Moon, setting up a Great Tusk as well. I think Great Tusk is one that I very publicly said I didn't love it to begin with. And then it started winning regionals. And I think it's maybe a little one-dimensional, but it is very powerful and very tough to navigate around.
So it's very funny that you're talking about Great Tusk being one-dimensional because I totally agree with that. Normally, I'm looking at this Great Tusk on Rhett's team, and he's running an Assault Vest Great Tusk. So this is kind of different from what we've been seeing, right? Traditionally, we've always seen Great Tusk either being a Scarf Abuser or maybe a Life Orb if you really wanted to pack that punch, maybe Banded, also Focus Sash. We've seen that. Right now, I see a lot of Scarf, but I think AV is very interesting because it kind of reminds me of like Kartana, where it has no natural defenses, but also kind of counterintuitive with the Headlong Rush and Close Combat. So anyways, though, we see Robert Bosch leading out with the Dragonite and the Arcanine against the Fluttermane and Chi-Yu from Rhett.
Yeah, Dragonite, Arcanine pairing up rather nicely. A nice safe Intimidate there is not going to be a big deal, but at least the Dragonite and the Arcanine aren't exactly threatened typing-wise, right? I see a lot of Dragonites as well being able to mix things up, just pivot into the hard flying type, get away from the Moonblast and the Dazzling Gleams to try and cause those problems. Let's see where the Trustalization shakes out for these trainers.
So something I do really want to note here is that Rhett is currently having Rhett is currently having choice specs on the Fluttermane, so that means that it cannot protect. So obviously that could be double targeted this turn. We actually see the Terra Ghost coming out from Rhett on the Chi-Yu, presumably to stop an extreme speed plus a Moonblast double tapping Chi-Yu, which indicates further that this Chi-Yu is probably not clicking Protect, because, Protect plus Terastallization would not be the best use of your time. And then Dragonite goes ahead and loses its Dragon typing, presumably for that Moonblast from the Choice Specs Fluttermane, and goes into a Flying type. So we actually see Shadow Ball go out onto the Dragonite instead of the Moonblast, and a Dark Pulse on the Dragonite. Let's see if Dragonite can hold on. It does with just 3 HP. Obviously, Dark Pulse can still flinch, but Flare Blitz coming out from Fluttermane, and then let's see if Dragonite really gets its attack off. It does get it off, so it's a Terra Blast onto the Fluttermane, and that means that Rhett has lost one Pokemon this early in the game. Terra Ghost has been revealed from Rhett, so there's no Terastallization on Rhett's field, and then there's obviously a 3 HP Dragonite now currently on the field with Terra Flying. So we see both their gimmicks for this current format, which is Terastallization, are revealed immediately, so there's no more of that into the future of the game.
Yeah, I mean, the Dragonite holding on there is absolutely huge. If it doesn't get to follow up with the attack onto the Fluttermane, then it's a very different turn, and things start to roll a little bit differently. But now Roaring Moon's come in. The Dragonite knows it's got a little bit of work to do, so protecting itself, maybe save itself for an extreme speed later. As Chi-Yu's just going with these Dark Pulses there, and this is going to make the Arcanine really tricky.
So the Breaking Swipe, I really, really like this play from Rhett, by the way. I have to say, so whenever I see a good play, I will, a critical hit. I'm pretty sure that mattered, given it's only like a 60 base power move. Arcanine's pretty traditionally trained bulky, and it spreads. So what I will say, though, is I really like that play because that not only lowered the attack onto both of the targets, it knocked out the Dragonite, and you double tapped it with Dark Pulse. You're just overwhelming Robert here with just your offensive options. So we do actually see Robert's back containing the Amoonguss and the Fluttermane inside of this, so it's kind of interesting because you don't really want to go into Amoonguss here because you can't Terra, and then obviously the Chi-Yu will hit you with a fire move. You never ever want to do anything about that. What's also kind of funny about this Dragonite is it's actually wasting a board slot. Because yes, all you can really do here is get off an extreme speed on the Roaring Moon. If you can get off an attack, because you're pinned down with the Chi-Yu, because outspeeds Dragonite as we've seen, and a Heat Wave will just knock you out. Same thing with Breaking Swipes. So if I'm Robert here, I maybe would have let Dragonite go down last turn, but also we'll have to see this out. Really just get a feel for this.
Yeah, the one thing I noticed actually about this Fluttermane over on Robert's side is no Dazzling Gleam, which here would be really nice, being able to obviously try and get a little bit extra down on the Chi-Yu and start wearing away at this Roaring Moon, but not having that is going to cause problems. The Roaring Moon, though, safe to switch out, making a smart read here. There's the Torkoal, so Photosynthesis will be going a little bit extra, probably on something else over on his team when that Roaring Moon comes back in. Dragonite, though, will go to extreme speed. Good chunk onto the Torkoal, a critical hit to make up for earlier, as the Moonblast isn't going to be very effective here, but still a good amount of damage. That's Chi-Yu hurting his own side of the board.
And a crit seals up the game. Honestly, that was kind of over regardless, because the worst that Fluttermane maybe could have done next turn was go for a Moonblast into the Chi-Yu, but Chi-Yu, as we can see with its team sheet, is holding the Focus Sash, so it would live that guaranteed. So that was just a very safe play there from Rhett. I really liked how Rhett played this. I feel like kind of like how last round went. What I like about this current meta, like we've already talked about, it's very aggressive, so you have to be very proactive, very intentional with what you're clicking. I feel like Robert's kind of got overwhelmed here, where Rhett just led with like the boom and just kind of just brought it.
Yeah, I mean, it was a pretty one-sided affair. Robert, did get that survive on the Dragonite early doors, but was not able to turn that into anything else. So does need to bounce back, I think, in the following games if he wants to send us to a Game 3.
Absolutely. So something I do think is kind of interesting as well is that we did not see a Palafin. So obviously Palafin's a little bit one-dimensional in the aspect where if you bring it, you typically want to lead with it. That's not always true. You can sometimes bring it in the back, but in general, you want to activate the hero form as quickly as possible so you actually have a Pokemon to play. So I wonder if an adaptation of Palafin could be kind of cool for Robert's perspective. As for Rhett, you got to feel good after that. That was just so oppressive. Like, you had so much offensive pressure from turn 1 by leading with Chi-Yu plus Fluttermane. You're pretty much guaranteed to get one attack off. Only thing that maybe could have gone different is if Robert led with his Fluttermane and could have gone for a Shadow Ball, Oko, the other Fluttermane. That could have been completely different. But you know what? We'll have to see exactly how this is going to change out. But I do think Robert will more likely than not be adapting to Game 2 because based on how that went, that was very decisive from Rhett, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, the Palafin's in a sticky situation because it's like, yes, you really want to hit the Chi-Yu early on. You want to hit something like the Great Tusk, but with Rhett's strategy, it feels like there's always going to be Sun in play, which is something that's going to obviously reduce that damage, make things a little bit harder for this big water type. And yeah, you can Terra, you can get the Mystic Water boost, get the 0 to hero going as well, but it's still going to be a little bit of a sticky one if you're trying to find a way through the sun, through some of these concerns that are going up from the side of Rhett. So back in the team preview, team selection, I do think an adaptation is probably needed, but we'll see where he wants to try and get that one out.
I do think what I do want to note here, I'm looking at Robert's team. He has access to Terra Water on Amoonguss, and that is a very, very good option here because if you Terra Water in front of the face of like a Torkoal or a Chi-Yu, catch it on a Heat Wave, you can obviously put it to sleep. And really, like Amoonguss, like I know you've played with Amoonguss since what? Like you've been playing since 2011. Amoonguss has been there like since like day one. You know that Amoonguss only needs one turn. Once you get up to that one turn, it's like, shoot, the game. Especially now with Pollen Puff, being that extra tool, it just needs one turn to kind of steal the game away. So if Robert can buy that one turn by using like a Terra Water maybe, or just not going for it, that could also swing the flow of things. I do want to say though, I completely agree with your Palafin point about like Sun being a very big problem for Palafin. Whenever I said that, I'm not gonna lie, I was really thinking like, okay, you know what, a water type would be very good here. But then I was thinking like, oh wait, you can always just change the Amoonguss's type to water as well. I think you bring up a very good point though. So we actually see Arcanine and King Gambit from Robert and Fluttermane and Chi-Yu here.
Yeah, it's going to be a big change in the start. The Dragonite wasn't quite able to do enough, especially when it was facing down some of those threats, and the Chi-Yu went Ghost. So it is going to try and mix things up here, but the King Gambit probably going to have to take that Terra type. It is going to be the Fire Terra, something that's been on the up and up in the past couple of weeks. I think a lot of people trying to figure out the best Terra for King Gambit. I've seen a lot of flying for a very long time now to obviously get away from those Earthquakes. With things like Great Tusk dropping out the meta a little bit, and people really leaning back on that Fluttermane, just getting the ability to go fire, resist those Moonblasts, makes a lot of sense. So it does start to add up, and we'll see if he can get the exact same value. Will, of course, help out against Chi-Yu as well. So this Terra really shuts down both sides of the equation. And if it's going to be Dark Pulse again from Chi-Yu, he does have to be a little bit careful.
Something I do also want to say is that you are Assault Vest on this King Gambit, and it is a very, very good item to have here. But also, that was a very proactive play from Rhetson, just identifying that the Arcanine would not protect inside this given board. And then you're free to get the Kowtow Cleave. Doesn't really do any damage though, because obviously Chi-Yu naturally resists that. And now, if you're Robert, I would be hoping that my Fluttermane is faster than their Fluttermane, because that's a bad turn one.
Yeah, you're going to need to get back into that game very, very quickly. Of course, breaking the Focus Sash with the Kowtow Cleave definitely helps out a little bit there, makes things a little bit more accessible. But you are really looking at a speed tie here with the special attack going up, so no help from the Booster Energy and the Protosynthesis. Fluttermane is one of those that's pretty difficult to try and figure out. But I mean, it also depends, right? If you know that you're not the fastest Fluttermane, you can play around that and use that knowledge. Maybe just be able to protect while you eat Shadow Balls from the other side and try and keep dealing with this Chi-Yu.
Yeah, so, obviously, if I had to pick, like, one person's position to be into, I would probably pick Rhett. I also see what Robert's going for here with the Protect, anticipating, like, a bait. Yep, that was a very, very smart play. And then, presumably, the King Gambit here just knocks out the Fluttermane with this, knowing that, Shadow Ball probably wants to go into Fluttermane because that's a guaranteed knockout there. So Protect was very, very great because the Speed Tier is unrevealed, getting a knockout. And now, currently, the board is now 3 for 3, both at full HP. Now it's back to kind of an even slant, whereas before it was much more one-sided. But Robert getting that key read right there just, I think, shifted the momentum of this.
Yeah, I mean, knowing that he was the slower one, knowing that he'd have to protect to be able to stick around, makes a lot of sense. But his being, Rhett's being choice locked with choice specs, no access to pivot to protect, so easy for the King Gambit to turn around and take that with the Iron Head. So 3-3, slight advantage over on the health bars of Robert. We'll be able to try and capitalize. And this King Gambit putting in a lot more work than the Dragonite did in the last game. So being able to try and lock things down a little bit, and we'll see if he's able to squeak things out. I think the next knockout is going to be really, really big. I think whoever gets the next knockout should be able to try and kind of keep the momentum going their way. But really does come down to this final turn, or final few turns, to see how it goes. Yep, it's going to be an easy knockout there with the Moonblast. Nothing the Chi-Yu could do this time. And I can see this one just rapidly progressing in Robert's favor.
Something I also got to say is that now the Beads of Ruin are gone, so obviously it's like Torkoal's not going to do any damage. Just took a little bit of damage, going for a regular Terra Blast here, doing absolutely nothing to the Assault Vest King Gambit. And now I think that the slant has officially gone from being in the Red's favor to being a neutral to now being in Robert's favor. It's been a whole like forward and back. But let's see how this goes. So also very notably, that is attack boosting Roaring Moon. So that may not be faster than this Fluttermane, but it's kind of weird because like we don't really know. Like Fluttermane has a naturally higher base speed than this Roaring Moon, but it also could be trained very fast because its attack stats so high. So we have to see how this plays out. But what I do know is that King Gambit's in an amazing position here, and King Gambit is really hard to disrupt. Obviously, you cannot really click anything with the breaking swipes because it'll just raise the attack. If anything else, like maybe a Jaw Lock were to come out or a Dragon Dance, Robert can just start kind of overwhelming that thing with offense. And also, there has not been a Terrestrialization from a Rhett's side of the field yet, has there?
No, he's held onto it for this one. So the Roaring Moon
Shadow
will
Ball.
be taking the Shadow Ball there. We'll get the Jaw Lock back, which is going to do a huge amount of damage to this side of things. And the Kowtow Cleave. So going all in on the Roaring Moon, but not threatening the knockout. Torkoal actually landing a Yawn over onto this King Gambit. The big thing here is like King Gambit's definitely going to struggle a little bit if it does go to sleep, but it's still going to be able to tank up hits. It's got the Assault Vest, so not going to be the easiest thing to knock out, especially with that fire typing.
So a few things I wanted to note here. I'm like looking at this play and like what's kind of going inside my head right here is obviously Rhett probably wants to protect because usually you go for Yawn to kind of get your opponent instead of a cycle where they force switch out and you can either read their switch out or double protect here. That's kind of like the mind game of Yawn. Something I do want to say though about this, last turn, Robert decided to be very proactive and try to read the Terra Poison from Rhett. So the Shadow Ball came out and the Kowtow Cleave onto the Roaring Moon, and maybe there was a more of a middle ground solution where it could have been Kowtow Cleave plus Moonblast, and regardless, you either get a neutral Kowtow Cleave or you get a Oko with Moonblast. But Ruiz actually comes out. That's kind of crazy. I did not see that one right. So Kowtow Cleave comes out, does 1,000,000 damage to the Roaring Moon. His defense is not that great. Overheat onto the Fluttermane. Now, what are your thoughts on this?
I mean, it's a fine Poison Terror, but it's going to be tough to really stick around. I mean, you're still at half health, right? That's the problem, is you're still at half health. He knows exactly what's going to be super effective, and should just be able to start wrapping this one up. I mean, don't forget, he's still got access to another Pokemon in the back, so should be able to try and tidy this one up. But, Rhett desperately trying to get back in the game. It's just how many hits can he really take?
Yeah, like ultimately, this game's like kind of coming to the conclusion. If the Shadow Ball picks up 100% over, if it does, okay, definitely picks up because that was 1.3x. But yeah, now that the Roaring Moon has fainted, it is just Torkoal up against a terrifying Terrifier King Gambit, which is asleep, so that's in Torkoal's favor. But ultimately, a Torkoal against a now a -2 Torkoal, especially against Fluttermane, it's gone. It's that doesn't really matter. Robert goes into his last Pokemon, and we should have this game wrapped up.
Yeah, I mean, at some point the King Gambit's going to wake up, right? That's the big concern, and even before that, I think the Dragonite's going to be pretty free to just deal as much damage as it wants over onto the side of this Torkoal. Not going to have access to Terra Blast, but should be good to potentially just, hit it with enough moves, show off a little bit of what it can do, and of course it's still got multi-scale in there as well. So yep, throw it in the towel from Rhett makes a lot of sense as this King Gambit goes back to its regular typing, and we go to Game 3.
So that King Gambit adjustment, can we talk about that, Dawes? What were your thoughts on that? Because Game 1, Robert got kind of steam piled. That was super quick. It was just done. Game 2, Robert just kind of came back swinging with that Terrifier on King Gambit. Turn 1 didn't go good. Made a really good read on Turn 2 of protecting the Fluttermane on that Shadow Ball, getting a knockout, and then making it an even slate, and then just kind of running it home. I think King Gambit was pivotal there because it was so hard to displace.
There was nothing that could actually stop that King Gambit after it Terrified. Without the Great Tusk there, I just don't see a world where he had anything that could hit it super effectively. I mean, the Chi-Yu wasn't going to be able to do everything it wanted to do. Fluttermane wasn't going to be able to put in the work, so definitely needs to, bring that one again and hope that Rhett doesn't pivot to the Great Tusk. If he does, then you need to be able to answer that Great Tusk late, which I think is why that Dragonite in the back makes a lot of sense, because then you just have an easy switch into something like a Headlong Rush, even a close combat, and then you're able to cause problems that way. So this Great Tusk is literally walled by the Dragonite. So I think it makes sense to throw out King Gambit and have the Dragonite available.
Something else I got to say, Turn 1 is, from a game perspective, the Turn 1, Robert left his Arcanine open. If you notice, Turn 1 it got double tapped by the Chi-Yu Dark Pulse combined with the Fluttermane Shadow Ball, and that knocked it out. But what's interesting about this Arcanine is it does actually have access to Protect, so technically that play was not very safe. In the grand scheme of things, in Game 3, I wonder if Rhett will be able to identify, like, okay, well, he might protect this turn because last turn I just got him in one turn, or like, how that mind game is going to kind of go. But that's the game of HOs. You force those and you just rock and roll with them. You just do them. So let's I don't know. I think you're kind of onto something with Great Tusk. As I was reading this, like, I think that Great Tusk is the best way to stop the Gambit. If there's no Great Tusk on this board, we had Torkoal, we had Chi-Yu, Fluttermane, and Roaring Moon. None of those have ways to reliably one-hit knock out a Terra Fire on the King Gambit.
I dropped the Roaring Moon. It just doesn't feel like it's been getting into that great a position. Like, yeah, it got a nice jaw lockdown, got some good damage, but it doesn't feel like it's pulling its weight in the same way that something like a Great Tusk may be able to. So we'll see what pivots we get there. There it is, right there in the leads.
Perfect. So this is very interesting. So they all kind of adjusted their leads. Robert went ahead and went with the Dragonite as the lead. So this is very interesting because now the only flying or the only fighting slash no, just ground resist. The only ground resist at the moment is currently on the board. So a ground type attack in the King Gambit could be a pretty free play, knowing you're gonna get at least super effective, if not a neutral attack off right here. Because Dragonite's on the board and that is Robert's only ground resist. And not to mention, if you're Robert, the only way you can hit this this Great Tusk with super effective damage is if you Terra Fire or Terra Flying, which would make you lose your Dragon typing against this Torkoal, and then you lose your resistance to it. And that's kind of bad.
Yeah, Torkoal getting switched out by the eject pack, so getting Protosynthesis set up, being able to get involved, but this is probably not exactly the position you want to be in. As your Fluttermane comes in, could be getting hurt in the following turn. We'll see how this one shakes out. Those Dragonite obviously pivoting over to the Flying Terror that we know about, and he's going to try and put down some big damage. Could be a world as well where the Great Tusk Terrors, just to make sure that he's able to do extra damage with the headline rushes and drop that fighting type out as well.
So my question is, I wonder how this Great Tusk is trained. If it's speedy, then it can obviously outspeed this Dragonite. So that's what I was wondering about. So it's bulky. It's very bulky because this Dragonite typically does not outspeed a Great Tusk unless there's speed investment. It's very bulky, in fact. So it lives the attack. And Close Combat comes out and crits the Arcanine. And obviously that crit matters. But honestly, that's a free switch out. But that does kind of suck. If you are in Robert's position, I would have rather have not gotten crit and lived than have gotten crit and fainted.
Yeah, I mean, considering you spent all that time as well. Trying to line things up with the Arcanine, the Intimidate to slow down the Great Tusk, definitely causing some problems. But King Gambit comes back in and can, of course, just tidy up a little bit of whatever it wants here, right? I think this pairing is really, really smart. Now the Great Tusk is low, easy to knock out. Then you can just start focusing on the Fluttermane as well. The only thing, though, is this King Gambit won't be able to pivot types. Being a Fire type was so big for it in the last game. So we'll take a look, see how this King Gambit wants to play. It does have the Assault Vest. So could, of course, take at least one hit pretty comfortably. Just got to hope for no more of those critical hits.
I have to give credit where it's due, by the way. I really like how Robert currently positioned this exact board right here. So he's guaranteed because the Great Tusk is holding the Assault Vest, so it cannot protect. It's inside of range of Extreme Speed, so that is a free slot where you lock it down with Extreme Speed. You also have the King Gambit, which ensures you get a one-hit knockout onto the Fluttermane. Given it is a Terra Fairy, this Iron Head will guarantee to knock it out. So I just really, I like good play. So, but Thunderbolt comes out. If there's a Paralysis, this might change the swing of things. No Paralysis. Actually, it was a Lumberry, so that wouldn't even matter. Kowtow Cleave actually coming out. I wonder if this is better or this is worse, because you can Sucker Punch the Fluttermane, but obviously Fluttermane can switch out. There's that whole mind game, in which case if it does switch out, you could double tap the Torkoal and read it switching out. So, there's no free plays either here. You got to go for a read. You got to pick one option and just kind of roll with it.
Yeah, I think Iron Head might have been the play, just to deal with it that way. But there's obviously angles, obviously lines. You got to cover those switches as well. The Fluttermane has to switch to be able to avoid this, and obviously doesn't. The second Thunderbolt would have been the knockout on the Dragonite, so waiting for him to go to that. Knows he can't get Extreme Speeded, but he gets caught by the Sucker Punch. This does mean free Terra Blast onto Torkoal for Dragonite. We'll be doing a huge amount of damage, and that is going to be not enough for the knockout, but the Torkoal is now just dangerously at risk.
Okay, so something that I do want to point out right here, going for Yawn, that is very, very interesting. Because now obviously you just lost your Fluttermane, and yes, you do technically have access to your Great Tusk inside the back, but that kind of makes you inside of a really, almost like kind of an awkward defensive position. Like, on one hand, yes, you force Robert to switch out of his King Gambit, but on the other hand, it's like Overheat may have put it into range of Heat Wave, and you could have had, maybe a stronger board that way. But different options. So I'm very interested to see how this one plays out. Torkoal, notably, is not in range of Extreme Speed. Chi-Yu, probably not in range of Extreme Speed, plus Sucker Punch. So this is going to be very interesting. This can go either way right now.
The Torkoal going Yawn actually feels like a little antithetical to the team, right? It's like the team's all about hyper offense for huge knockouts. And then Torkoal's like, we'll slow it down, or I'll put you to sleep next turn. Like, not saying it's a bad thing. I definitely think it's interesting for late game board positions. But it certainly makes things a little bit harder when it comes through the end of the game. Robert waiting right to the end there to lock in his moves. Let's see if he's able to get it, as there is the terrestrialization, which, depending on what he's locked in, could be big, but it's terrestrialization on Torkoal, actually.
What is that? Terra flying.
Those are the balloons. It's flying. It's like the most obvious terror in the game.
Oh, I was looking down. I was looking at the sheet, but that's so funny. But yeah, so the balloon's coming out. There's Terra flying. Protect coming out from the Dragonite. That's kind of cool. Heat Wave does go out. Obviously, Dragonite protects. If it lands on a King Gambit, this might knock it out. Might do a bunch of damage. We'll have to see. King Gambit clutching that. Oh, that's a Soul Best Foot low kick coming out. Base 20 power on this Chi-Yu, even if it's super effective. That's not doing anything. And then what was that? Was that Overheat? Did I see that right?
No, that was a Terra Blast.
So, oh no, King Gambit's asleep now. Oh, this is,
Yeah, King Gambit's real asleep. That is, I think King Gambit, trying to take that knockout there is audacious, right? Like, I know it's obviously a super effective hit, but it doesn't weigh anything.
Yep.
And that is a big factor with low kick, a big limiting factor. You know, it's not like we're throwing it at some of the other options. So now the Dragonite being asked to do all of the heavy lifting, and as you mentioned earlier, getting rid of your Dragon typing in the face of a heat-waving Chi-Yu in the sun, that's when you want the Dragon typing. And this is going to make it a sticky situation, as anything is going to knock out this King Gambit. But, what are you going to do? Switch in, just it doesn't, have the options to be playing around like that. So I think Chi-Yu just sits there and heat waves in the sun for a couple more turns. Dragonite can try, but he's not going to be able to get a land on the extreme speed.
Something I do want to kind of point out that's kind of interesting. So Robert actually does not have Dazzling Gleam. That's not a win condition where he can just get the whole team to Dazzling Gleam range. The other thing is, I wonder if the previous turn, if King Gambit would have gone for the Kowtow Cleave instead of that low kick. Notice how it survived for one turn. If it could have gotten value out of that one turn and gone for Kowtow Cleave into the Torkoal, then this game might have gone completely different. But because of that choice, it's very, this is what I meant about the impact of specific turns. You need to make sure you get the most out of every single turn. So that's a very good case study right there, is that low kick was not the value Robert was looking to get there, whereas a knockout and a Torkoal, securing that could have made this game 100% over inside the bag.
Yeah, well, at least, he gets the special attack boost, Protosynthesis going off. Wouldn't have been able to get it anyway because he has booster energy, but the sun, making sure of that fact. The problem is that you say no spread means it's going to be real difficult to try and get both of these knockouts as quickly as you like. And Rhett also does have to be careful and does take a look at the Great Tusk in the back. Let's see, though, with Chi-Yu protecting himself. If he's made this call, he may have just found a way back in this game. I don't know if the double protect was the play was the call there.
That was crazy. Oh, man, that was so cool. So Robert just hard called that. Obviously, if Chi would have attacked there, that would have been completely different. But now it's a full HP Fluttermane against a Great Tusk and a Chi-Yu. So it's really going to come down to how this is trained. So Robert could kind of pick his choice as to which one he wants to knock out here, right? Because if he goes into the Great Tusk, obviously the Headlong Rush will live it. Headlong Rush will not be able to come out, which I don't know if he'll be able to live down Fluttermane. But as for the Chi-Yu, let's see. Last time we saw Moonblast do about 70%. So as long as his Flamethrower lives, which takes pretty comfortably, we may have just seen this game turn around.
Yeah, I mean, I think that turn from Rhett, right? If both Chi-Yu and Torkoal attack and put damage down, then whichever one he knocks out, the next turn you just do the same thing again, right? You just double target every time. You've got two Pokemon, and you know that Robert does have access to a Dazzling Gleam to spread that damage around. But at some point, this Chi-Yu's going to get hit by a Moonblast, and it's not gonna appreciate that. So it seems like that one turn, that one misstep with a hyper offensive team, for one turn he just wasn't offensive.
And it gets it.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to be offensive on every single turn at the end of these games, and he wasn't able to do that at the end. So that's it. 3 games. Robert bounces back after a bruising game 1, but playing really nicely in games 2 and 3.
I am very impressed by that because that was so cool to watch. Just the small mistakes, how much they kind of snowballed into the momentum shifting. It was first of all, the low kick came out from the King Gambit on a Chi-Yu, but that value ended up being a lot of value inside the end game because that tiny bit of chip snowballed into a Moonblast knocking out. It's that was such a good game.
Well, what kills me about it is yes, the Chi-Yu could be protecting, but the Torkoal can do damage too, right? I don't know. I'm really confused from Rhett's side there, why he decided to play that one. But Robert did the right thing, right? Made that call and said, you know what, I have the type advantage over your Chi-Yu. You're going to protect it. I'll take the Torkoal, and then next turn, there wasn't going to be enough damage to be able to deal with that. So made a lot of sense. Maybe the flamethrower wasn't the play right there at the end. Maybe had to look for something a little bit different, but just wasn't able to get this one across the line.
So something I do want to point out. So I actually do kind of, I totally understand the reason why Chi protected is because Jan was coming out from Torkoal just to kind of put it to sleep. And like the thing is, if you knock out Chi on that one turn and Torkoal goes for a Jan, then Moonblast knocks out the Great Tusk, and then you have your Torkoal locked into Overheat. That's the only thing it has that can knock out the Chi and just spamming Overheat, or knocking out the Fluttermane, just spamming that and just chugging it in, lowering special attack each turn. That's not allowing you ever want to go down. And vice versa though. Like Robert kind of just called it though. Like Robert was just like, okay, well, how do I win this? My opponent goes for a Protect on Chi here. I have to call this. So he just called it and just like committed. So that was a really good highlight of a read about how it just completely shifted the game.
Yeah, I mean, I think in that turn, it's like if you just go like Overheat on Torkoal and Flamethrower, or Heatwave, you've got damage down, and then next turn you're still in a great position, right? So I think backing out of playing hyper offensively has come back to haunt this team a little bit.
Yeah. I will say though, I haven't really seen like Jan Torkoal that much. I believe Joe just won Portland and he had Fisher eject pack. I don't know if he had Jan on that one. I know he had Overheat with Fisher. Maybe it was Jan. But the only kind of Jan I've really seen was Dozo and Tinglu. I don't know if you've seen that where this Nails actually popularized this. It was Stealth Rocks and you just like go for Jan and force him to switch out and you have hyper offense in the back and just like singles. Like you chip him with the Stealth Rocks and just get him into E-speed range with whatever you got. It's kind of cool.
Yeah. Well, we can explore some more strategies in our next round as round 3 should be coming up very, very shortly. So we'll be back with more action from here in Maitland.